I recently returned from Slovenia where I had the opportunity to explore the Triglav National Park with its wooded mountain slopes, emerald rivers and beautifully clear waterfalls. The intention was to scout for potentially running a workshop there, which didn't really go to plan, but more on that later. Firstly, I'd like to look back at one particular location in the Sotra Valley which I enjoyed very much. I think my style of photography is well suited towards building up an intimate knowledge of modest sized locations and ultimately working towards capturing scenes which I perceive to represent the best qualities and character of a given location. The process always starts with a feeling, that intangible thing that you sense when you walk into a place for the very first time and you let your instinct and emotion guide you. I guess it's a bit like buying a new home. You just know when you walk into a place if it's right for you based on your gut feeling. And I think the vibe in a photographic location has to be right, otherwise creatively you're starting from quite a weak position. I felt very positive about this first location as it was rich in its diversity, colour and atmosphere. The vibrant flora, the tones and clarity of the water, the mossy boulders and the noise that filled the woodland too. But the journey to photographic fulfillment can take a long time, but with hours rather than weeks to spare, it was always going to be a challenge to film, photograph and start to understand the location. But I'm probably actually quite happy with this first image because it's very representative of the location and it gives me this wider view that I can then work on and begin to refine. I'm not a big fan of very long exposures. I typically prefer to capture movement and detail in the water. In retrospect, I think my shutter speed of half a second was maybe just a touch too slow, but there's definitely some detail intact and I just love the shimmer on the lip of the fall just here. The elements I definitely wanted to include was a lovely little fall appearing from the rocks at the bottom left, the glorious colour of the deep emerald pool and those warmer tones in the wet rock contrasting with a river carving its way through and disappearing with depth into the distance. The naturally dark vignette at the top corners really just helps to put a bit more emphasis on the soft morning light filtering down through the recession of mossy trees with a bit of humidity and haze in the air for a touch of atmosphere. I purposely removed the sky and composed it as a square image because the areas to the left and right didn't really contribute anything meaningful, but also being a little bit tighter puts more emphasis on the relatively narrow nature of the shallow gorge. Focusing on the main wet rocks at aperture f9 has given me a nice crisp image with a little bit of softness further back for some depth and separation. So yeah, quite happy with this, and there was certainly a nice little starting point. Moving further up the valley, I found a position where I could enjoy the waterfall featured in the background of my previous shot. You can see I'm positioned slightly precariously on the sloping rocks. I certainly wouldn't advocate doing this, but in this instance I was confident I had enough grip, so I was prepared to accept the risk. My initial plan was to start quite wide and take in the whole view, which I think kind of works. It certainly has appeal. I think the movement has been captured quite nicely, the colour of the water comes through well, but I feel there's a bit of tension between the flow of the water running off in the opposing bottom corners, and that lump of rock in the middle also disrupts the flow. There's definitely some points of interest and detail to enjoy, which allows your eye to travel around, but does it all really come together, or is it an image of two halves? I'm not so sure, to be honest. I felt the uncertainty while I was there, so I began to take some closer views of the details I was drawn to on the opposite side of the river. The gentle cascade over the mossy rocks, the fine lines of water appearing from underground, and the textured rock overhanging the aqua pool. It can be very easy to miss these quiet and delicate scenes when you're surrounded by the noise and atmosphere of the bigger falls, but these small views have their own voices, which tell us a lot about the character of a place. I also get a lot of pleasure from composing to balance the form, light, texture and colour in these intimate views. I used the Lee polarizer to bring out the colour and clarity of the pool, but then increased the ISO to 400 in order to speed up the shutter and capture detail in the falling water. As with the first image, I composed the image as a square, not for consistency, but because that's what the scene dictated to me. I captured a few more images along similar lines, but I don't really have a great deal to show from Slovenia apart from the enjoyment of a stunning country, some good ice cream and meeting some new friends. As I said, the intention was to begin scouting, but I'm afraid it just didn't tick all the boxes for how I want to run photography workshops. There's fantastic images to be had in Triglav National Park, the mountains, rivers, waterfalls, colours, but I just couldn't find enough accessible woodland that suited my style of photography, and I can't in good conscience lead a workshop where there's just not all the key ingredients. We had a motto when I used to go freshwater fishing, which was Piscator non solum piscator, which essentially means there's more to fishing than catching fish, and I think that same sentiment holds true for photography. So without that intangible essence, that gut feeling which ignites you and excites you, then how can you hope to be inspired and to inspire others as a creative? If nothing else, it's reinforced my existing belief that I'm incredibly lucky to have what I've got on my doorstep. So perhaps purely from a standpoint of creativity and meaning, I should always scrutinise the benefits of the next travel opportunity. Nevertheless, Slovenia was an absolute joy to visit, and I'm incredibly thankful for having done so. But for now, that's it for this episode. I hope you've enjoyed it, and as always, I hope to see you for the next one.